Right. No, wait, hold on. That's not right. Let's get ready to rumble. Welcome back, guys, to another tier list here. We're doing weapon tier list, and we're changing it up a little bit. The categories, we have the must-have. That's always going to be there. Then we've decided to go with mech dependent and map dependent, and then of course the unnecessary. So we're going to see some interesting results here, and we're going to go by category. So we're starting off with the assault. Let's begin.
My heart hurts if I have to put this on unnecessary. It has to be there.
Yeah.
Plasma have to follow. Of course. Pulse cannons. Pulse cannons. Can't say much. Still useless. Fusion cannons. Yep.
Useless.
Must have.
We'll
Carbines.
summarize it at the end once we're done.
Definitely. Carbines. Carbines. Yeah. Keep going. Keep going with the unnecessary.
Viper.
Slight twist with the Vipers that become mech dependent because they output a little bit of damage. I'm not sure how much difference is between the Viper guns and the miniguns, but I wouldn't say it's that much. But yet it's still mech dependent. Really depends on the mech that you're putting them on.
Going through, just summarizing the unnecessary, there's a lot of factors that are put into this. Some weapons do not even have 8, 12, 16 version where you can try to combine for the end game mechs, which in this case, the 24 energy and the 32 energy, which is something we need to keep in mind as well. And the other weapons are just either too slow, inconsistent, not enough damage output, so that covers from fusion and under. The carbine is definitely fun. That's for sure. It has an amazing sound to it, but overall, not enough damage output, and also does influence the player to peak more than often, and that's another problem we will have in the end game, right? You want to minimize how much you peak to damage people.
Yeah, high burst stuff, and you can't really expose that much often.
With the Vipers, though, with that missile shot, it's great because one, a lot of damage, and second, you can jiggle peek that, so you don't have to always be peeking. You can even just build it up by shooting the wall and then getting that missile at the end. So that's definitely why it goes up there. Moving on to the RPGs, not to mention, we just said already that it does not even have a higher version. It's unnecessary for endgame. Voltaic.
Moving on to Voltaics, yeah.
What do you think?
Must have. It's still really mech dependent because I love the concept. I would love to have a better RPG weapon in the game. Voltaics are, I would say, just the 16 energy version worth using, but again, just a fun weapon and really mech dependent. Can't go over this.
Yeah, Voltaic definitely makes the cut in this sense because it does have extra things that are very important. A lot of us might forget, especially when we used to play Arc Torrents a lot. It can mess up the crosshair, right? It can really mess up the aim, which is very good.
Yeah, makes it flicker and
yeah, against people that's perfect. Against bots it doesn't matter, but against people,
yeah, of course,
you know, you really fluster them and can get away with some things as well. So it definitely has some perks, and the burst damage with the radius gets people out of corners. A lot of the times now in the end game, we are usually hiding behind the walls for, you know, good reason, obviously. So we want to get as much radius weapons as possible. And we'll get to the reason why we're always hiding now more than before, because we are capable of doing that due to the disc launcher nerfs. Then we'll talk about, of course, the storm racks coming in. So moving on, missile racks.
Missile racks again, mech dependent weapon. As much as I love it, I can't consider it a must-have, but it does the job. It has some damage output. Radius is not so bad, but again, compared to the counterpart, Stormrax, it's inferior. So you can have it if you want a little variety, or if you don't want to invest, or if you can't invest in 2 sets of Stormrax. But again, it's not bad. It's not bad. But it's just mech dependent.
With that in mind, let's just skip to it actually immediately, since the predecessor here, the Storm Racks, can definitely go above the Missile Racks here with the must-have list for sure.
Of course.
High radius, high damage, a decent amount of reload time, just 5.5 seconds. So it can definitely do a lot, especially with a lot of the walls and people hiding and all that. So overall, great weapon to use.
Agree. Constant pressure, constant firepower, great radius. Disruptors, I love the weapon again, but this one actually is map dependent. because projectile is low, so you can't really afford going in with this weapon, despite the fact that you can put it both fast mechs and slow mechs, because damage is on point, it's got some cool radius, but it's really map dependent because you have to use it on those maps that you can afford sitting back on. Can't really use them on CPC.
Yes, 5v5 maps, especially the closed ones, 2v2 maps themselves, this weapon does do great, especially when a lot of people are still not familiar how to play against it. The one advice I can give is if you cannot run away from it, might as well just take the damage from the front is the best way to deal with that, because if you just let it pass by you on the side, that's a lot of side and potential back damage as well. So you don't want to risk that much
Yes.
amount of damage. It's insane.
Definitely, I'm trying to run against them to take them to the face in order to avoid that back damage.
Yeah.
Because that back damage gets me unguarded whenever there are situations like ping differences.
And that's going to be a big factor of some of our choices again throughout the weapons moving forward. The ping. Looking at it now, we got for the beams, your favorite. Where do you want to put it?
I can't, I can't put it on a must have. They have to go in the unnecessary category. Because there is no damage and people know thermals. Can't spend much time on them. Stasis beams. Yeah, it's cool slowing down people, but again, unnecessary because no damage. You have to expose a lot and
Even though the slow is quite insane. But we do have other weapons that can do similar effect. So let's see where we're going to place those weapons when we come to them. Also, thermal lance, the 30% extra damage it gives to the teammates is nice. But we do also have other weapons that can do that. So let's talk more about it later. Graviton beam, I'm gonna take this one.
But please go on.
Yeah, Graviton beam. Look, I personally played a lot of Graviton beam. I love it, and it's great. It's great against bots. It's great in the free for all. But the thing is, we are talking about only end game PvP tournaments, customs, and all that. So it fails in this regard because a lot of people. Well, let's look at Graviton for a second here. The main thing that makes this weapon great is the implosion effect. Okay, the implosion effect hits at 1.5 seconds using both the arms at the same time. If it's just one arm, that's 3 seconds. So the issue with this is people are going to hide. People don't have to just stand there and take the damage from you. They will just be hiding, and this is how the game is going on now. You jiggle peek, you peek for a second, you shoot, you go back to hiding. You don't have to stay head on and take all that damage. So this is where it fails, unfortunately, against people who are going to be hiding. This weapon is not used at its maximum potential. And looking at particle beam,
same thing, right?
It follows the same thing, yeah, because I even tested this a lot, especially with Eclipse, where I could be at least invisible, so I can get some kind of build up on it. But the difference between this build up and the Viper is that Viper you can actually build up, shooting a wall, you don't have to hit some mech. While this weapon, you have to hit a mech. That just influences the mech to peak more than required and really puts you in the line of fire and potentially die. So this is why these things are unnecessary that we're putting them, because they also put you in a risky position. Then one could say, okay, let's put them on a shield mech, right? If we put them on a shield mech, everything's going to be fine. True. But again, nobody has to peek you that long. They could just ignore you. If you are behind a shield, if you're in an Aegis or a Panther behind a shield, in reality, people actually avoid you. They don't want to even see you because they're gonna die. Like this, it's already a one-sided one versus one situation. So they're gonna hide until your shield goes down, and then they're gonna peek you, right? So that's why, like, it's just a difficult weapon to include a map or a mech-dependent category. Okay.
Moving on, definitely shotguns. I don't like that much shotguns, and normal shotguns, definitely they fall into the unnecessary category.
Yeah.
Following up, we got the fragments. I will say they are really mech dependent. Damage output is not that bad. I'm not gonna lie. Again, that's another weapon you can choose to use if you don't want to spend on ember guns or if you don't want to invest on 2 ember gun setups. It's mech dependent. Can't say much more about it. And moving on, we got arc torrents. It used to be such a great weapon before the rebalance, but now it definitely falls into the unnecessary category. Because again, it's got that trait that makes the crosshairs flicker, but no extra attributes nowadays. And moving on to amber guns, yeah, definitely a must-have in every hangar. It's got damage output, it's got also the overheat effect, which every teammate can benefit from. and short reload. If you strap on the right implants on it, it can do awesome.
Let's keep in mind that when we put in the must-have category, we're also kind of matching with our previous tier list with the mechs, and we would notice that this weapon goes on Nomad, goes on Surge, goes on even Seekers in some cases. So if we look back to our mech tier list, we had those three mechs as must-haves. So since those mechs are more inclined to be in that hangar, then this weapon will definitely be in the hangar in one of those mechs at least. So that's why this goes up to the must-have category.
Of course, if you didn't see the video, go check it up now. What you waiting for? Come on. What are you waiting for?
Was that a Mickey Mouse?
Oh, that was the serious me, the serious part of me
The
that
serious
says
part
go
of
watch the video because
right.
you will get all the value that you need.
We're not gonna get much of this content, so watch out for serious
Uh,
Stallone.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, moving on to the repeaters.
Yeah, repeaters, again, another mech-dependent weapon
Okay.
because the damage output is not that bad, I would say, because you can take down a Bastion in one go if you got the right implants, the maxed out pilot, and you got the speed as well to rotate around it. But again, it's mech-dependent because it has a self-reloading mechanism similar to the stasis beam weapons. It reloads by not using them. So you can't go on multiple targets. You have to carefully select your targets and possibly get away once you go in. So that's the only thing that places it into the mech dependent category.
Okay, moving on to Revoker.
Revoker, again, a mech dependent weapon because it's a shotgun that fires one single projectile that goes back and forth. But the problem with it, it's the fact that it's slow. Okay, you have to be super precise. You can afford doing this, for example, with a railgun, just because the railgun, it's like poof, and the target's hit, and you don't have to wait for the projectile to get back to fire the second shot. But this thing is slower, so you can't really afford brawling with a weapon that is this slow. So it's the same reason that you can't really brawl with disruptors. But again, disruptors are different because they have a radius. And to get back to the Revoker, it's just mech dependent, and you can have it as a fun option. But again, there are better options.
And we'll get back to at the end on which mechs we think they're dependent on. We can give a quick list, brief.
Of
We
course.
don't have to be completely accurate with all the mechs, but at least a good chunk for each weapon. All right, moving on to long arms. Sniper weapon, which is unnecessary for sure. Not enough damage output, insane reload time. I don't even understand why, but moving on. Gauss rifle, interesting mechanism. Wish it was stronger weapon. Then we got the quantum gun. Now I've actually enjoyed playing quantum gun a lot. It was like a nice little rainbow effect of the different weapons. I even had the stasis implant just to get that slow super fast, and it was annoying. It was definitely working in terms of stasis, but the problem is so many other weapons just overshadow this effect because it doesn't do much damage. You need to over peak if you want to try to get some damage output. You can play the support role by slowing everyone on the map, but unfortunately, given how the game became fast-paced with a lot of dashers and the teleporters, it's just difficult to really get some output with this weapon. Not to mention, Panther and Aegis are also pretty annoying and pretty much used a lot, so it makes this weapon very unnecessary to have in the first place. Okay.
Yes.
EM rifles.
Mech dependent because, yeah, it's a good weapon, don't get me wrong. Despite the damage output that it has, the damage fall off, getting close range, it's really what hinders the weapon.
You would put it on mechs that will be fine to use their ability while staying laid back rather than every mech in the game. Because if you put it on certain mechs, like let's say Surge, a lot of people do, which is fine. It hinders the stun effect. So now you're not gonna be able to stun with maximum value of the weapon. You would be using your dash to relocate or reposition, which is also good. But again, you're using half of the ability rather than all of the abilities. So that's why it's, you want to say mech dependent. You want to put it on things like Panther. You want to put it on things like Eclipse, perhaps. Things that can stay in the back while using the ability at its fullest form, right? Without sacrificing a specific part of the ability, right? Okay. Next, Railgun, your personal favorite. You can have this one.
My personal favorite definitely falls into the must-have category because it is a sniping weapon. You can use it even as a brawling weapon. And some people will say, yeah, but reload, okay, but you got free shots. So it's all about micromanaging the ammo because you can use it pretty much on every mech that you can think of course. Don't use the unnecessary mechs. And again, if you want to learn which are the unnecessary mechs, go check out the previous video. Definitely, you would need the implants as well to make it work to the fullest. But again, that's true for every weapon in this tier list. So again, great damage output. You can use it at pretty much every range. Use it. Definitely use it.
Simply just use it. Yeah.
Use it.
Well, the main difference here also, let's say, when we talked about lag before, is that this weapon shoots instantly, right? And EM has, a little delay. And if you want to try to reduce the factor of lag, you want to have things that are also shooting instantly for that specific reason, right? So these things also come into play when we decide which weapon is a must-have and which weapon is not. Okay, so moving on. The javelins, the normal one, the red one, my favorite color. Fun, but unnecessary, of course. And I'll follow it immediately with the cryo javelin, a much better
the blue
version.
ones. Yeah,
but still unnecessary. And that's because we have other things that are coming into play. Helix rack, which is a much more bigger upgrade than javelins. It is map dependent, however, because it all depends on the ceilings, the space. Is it open? Is it closed? If it's semi-open, we'll call it, right? So that's very important to know when we choose these kind of weapons. It's definitely a great weapon, but if you have a ceiling on top of your head, can't do much with it. All right. Follow it immediately with the Savant here, actually, even again, map dependent. They are, I would say, different in their own way because the Savant can actually target multiple mechs at once as long as they are inside the square crosshair that you will be seeing once you have this weapon on. And Helix is more focused on one single target at a time. So definitely two interesting weapons with two different reasons, but the same situations, which is map dependent.
Definitely. Keep in mind that if you get close range with this weapon, you can actually shoot straight the target in front of you. But again, why would you do that when you have better options like Missile Racks or Storm Racks? Not a bad weapon, I will say. I can't wait for the 12 version to be available. But again, map dependent, and still, I'm eager to test it out.
Yeah, agreed. Disk launcher, a lot of controversy here with what's going on with the categories, but ever since the rebalance, disk launcher has, I'm not going to say it hasn't fallen off the market completely. It's still usable because it does have an insane amount of radius. And having one per 25 mech hanger in the team, is not bad. It's still pretty good because you can chip off people that are hiding and really pressure them to leave the hiding spot. You could do it with other weapons like storm racks as well and missile racks, but this one does have a larger radius than those of weapons. So we would say it is mech dependent because you do need the right mech for it too. You can't put it in.
Definitely. A mech that boosts the damage output, for example, I use it on Orion sometimes, can still do the trick.
Moving on, we have the rocket mortars.
Mortales.
I think this is straightforward as map dependent, and I'm just gonna put them both together here. The fuse mortars, both of them map dependent. Each one's different style. The fuse mortars coming out does not make the rocket mortars, worse. It's just a different style. The rocket mortars can shoot at one location, huge amount of radius, and the fuse mortar can pressure a certain location. Of course, the fuse mortars, I would say, is still better than the rocket mortars, but they will still be both used as map dependents. You can invest in both of them without any issue as well. So that's.
But what if I decide to, I don't know, shoot a ceiling with it?
Right.
That's a very specific thing, but
I think for you, that's why the rocket mortar is not unnecessary.
Mech dependent.
It's mech
that
dependent.
Is mech dependent.
We'll just hover it here for 5 seconds if you can explain why is it mech dependent.
Yeah, of course. Keep in mind that mortars, yes, you cannot shoot them if your target is closer than 45 meters range, which is the minimum range required for you to shoot the mortars. So you can shoot the mortars between 45 and 225 meters. You can use this at your own advantage. Let's say you find yourself in a tunnel, so ceiling above your head, no way to shoot the mortars in the open. A target approaches you. People will never expect you to fire the mortars against the ceiling. How do you kill the target that is approaching you? You simply target someone else on the map. So definitely you need at least one target being visible above 45 meters, anywhere on the map. So basically you get close to your target, shoot the mortar against the ceiling, being close to your target, but aiming at someone that's above 45 meters. And that's how actually you can use mortars as a close range weapon. I will make
Yeah.
a video about that, definitely.
Yes, definitely. I've been a victim to that situation multiple times and always catches me off guard. So, because it's kind of weird. Like, you would think, like, okay, mortars, I'm just going to go next to his face and what could go wrong? And how wrong was I? Okay, moving on. Miniguns, definitely mech dependent. It did get a buff, and that buff does give it a lot of damage, but still, you just can't put it in any mech you want. It does also reduce the turning speed, so that's also why we want to emphasize on the mech dependency of this weapon.
Yeah, pretty much
Yeah,
whatever gets close to you, you have to slowly rotate while the thing goes circle around you 2 or 3 times.
yeah.
So,
Not to
yeah.
mention if you get slowed by stasis,
Oh my god,
forget it. You're basically stunned. Uh, Going
pretty
back
much.
to chain gun, unnecessary. There's a better version, which is a minigun, so there's no need for the chain gun to be even considered in the first place. Not
Can't
to
argue
mention,
with that.
it's a legendary weapon, so trying to invest in it would be too much, right? So if you want to invest in one of these weapons, at least go for the minigun for sure. All right, moving on to nade launchers.
Another weapon that is map dependent, because you, of course, have to be aware of ceilings. And yes, you can shoot targets in front of you without the arching if they are close enough. But again, to use them to their maximum potential, you would rather want to sit back and constantly pressure the enemies from a distance. So, considering that fact that it arches over obstacles, try learning the curve and use it to your own advantage, because the weapon is not that bad. It has some decent damage output, and you can put it on both slow max and fast max. So yes, you will want to sit back, but you can do a lot of stuff with this weapon because people don't expect you to land nades on them. So it's a really skill-based weapon,
Mhm.
but again, it's also map dependent because you can't really use it effectively on maps that have ceilings.
Yep. It's also like a probability kind of weapon because you are going to be shooting at a specific area where you want to land on people. And the great thing about this weapon is it doesn't warn the opponents. There's no like mortars or helix kind of warning. So some people could just be unexpectedly exploded all of a sudden because what you're trying to shoot at is a specific area. And most areas in an open map is common. We all know where people are hiding. We can see them where they're hiding. So as long as you get used to the range and and there's space to arch the bullets, then you are fine. Okay.
Yep.
Well, here's another kind of nade weapon, but I think we can definitely agree that it's lesser damage output. It has a weird mechanic with like a burst damage where it shoots 3 at a time, which ruins the
Yeah.
flexibility of where you want to aim the weapon. And it doesn't have that much ammo. I think it's 6 ammo, was it? 6 ammo versus the 8 from the nade launcher,
Uh,
if I'm not
if I'm not
mistaken.
wrong,
Okay,
could
let me
be
double check
could
that.
be 9, so you can shoot 3 bursts
Oh, it is
before
9. Right.
reloading. It's 9.
I just flipped number 6, I guess. Okay,
Ah,
so
no
this
worries.
is 9.
It's a
But yeah,
useless weapon.
okay. Overall, it's slower also. The RPM is
Yeah,
60 with the versus the nade launcher at 150. So that's also
and also the damage output is slower
yeah,
per nade.
yeah. So it falls under the unnecessary role. Okay, moving on to the pod gun.
Last but not least,
Last but not least, definitely not least, it's an interesting weapon. I myself, I like the
yeah,
weapon. I don't have it yet, but I love the weapon. The concept of it is amazing. At 100-meter range, it locks, basically curves on the target, locks on the target, and then above that, it becomes random, not random, but like more of a straight line, and reaches up to 300, which is interesting in some maps as well. So this one, I would say, is mech dependent though, because you can't just put on any mech. You have to have a mobile mech. You have to have a mech that can be out in the open longer than usual. So like Eclipse, for example. And we'll talk more about which mechs fit in right now. Okay, so to summarize, again, the categories are based all on our previous video in the mech tier list. So we're considering, when we say mech dependent, we're considering the must-have mechs, the always good, and the situational, which is a total of 21 mechs. And it goes over the
Correct.
map dependency because maps are more than the mechs. So it's more of a narrowed down list, if you will. So again, kind reminder, the always or the must-have mechs that we had on the tier list were Seeker, Surge, and Nomad. And the must-have weapons work on all three of them as well. So that's why those three are making up the top of the list. And then mech dependency, going to the first weapon, Stallone, what do you think the Viper works on?
Well, the first thought that comes to my mind, since it's an assault weapon, and yes, you can build up the rocket shooting at the wall, but that is not really ammo-wise recommended. Orion, definitely, because you can place the mark, do extra damage to the mech, to the shields, and just fire with impunity, short bursts, and then get back in cover. I never tested it out long enough, but definitely Orion would be my go-to choice when it comes to Viper weapons.
Agreed. And even mechs that are mobile enough, so let's say Eclipse, mechs that have shields also, like Aegis and Panther, those mechs can definitely stay long into the, into the open and maximize the output of this weapon. Moving on to the Voltaic RPG here. Again, very amazing weapon in its own way. Mechs like Aegis, mechs like Panther, perhaps even
Soulless,
Solus,
why
Vortex.
not?
Yeah, Vortex also, because it can really stay out long and really get that burst damage. You go into someone's face with that and disrupt their crosshair, and you can do a lot of impact. So many mechs that we have on our list can work with the Voltaic. It's just depending on your playstyle as well, because if you don't want to do that instant burst shots and you rather have more consistent shots, then it doesn't work for you. Moving on to the missile racks, Stallone.
My personal favorite out of this mech dependent category. I like the weapon. First thing that comes to my mind is my good old Redeemer with Meserax. Cool thing about it is that you can fire the first missile, then activate the ability, so the whole clip will come out. Of course, you will have to aim correctly to your target for the whole path of your backtrack to land the shots. Same thing comes for the Stormax. They have a similar firing pattern as Meserax. So definitely shoot the first missile, backtrack, and land the whole clip, surprising your target because given the Redeemer rebalance, people will not expect you to do this.
Yeah, I agree. Falling a victim to that too as well. You and your toys with the creativity you got. Frag guns. What do you think?
Fragment guns, definitely a nice weapon. Again, a good alternative if you don't want or can't invest into ember guns. Damage output is not that bad. Have slight more range than ember guns, so that comes in handy. I will go with Surge. I've seen that a lot. I've also seen nomads with fragment guns, but I would personally go for a Surge with
Yeah,
fragment guns.
yeah, agreed. You do need that close. You do need that stun ability that can really help you maximize the damage, so you can hit side and back damage as well. Because that's the main thing it lacks. Otherwise, but also if you do stun multiple targets, that wide range does help a lot. Repeaters, I can only think of two main mechs that can work good with this one is Nomad and Seekers, because Nomad has the ability to go in and out. If you dash in a target, deplete your weapon, kill the opponent, and then get out of there as soon as possible. Or you would do it with a Seeker, where also you would teleport immediately back behind the target, kill the target, and it will automatically go back. Because you need that time for it to recharge. You can't just continuously fight with the weapon. That's the main issue with it. Moving on to the Revoker.
Revokers. Definitely, as mentioned, best option would be a Surge
Yeah,
because you can stun your target and get your shots in for the player becomes free to move again.
exactly. It's very important to have it with ease. Like the weapon is great, but if you can maximize its value in an easier way, that's what makes it even better, right? So that's why we say certain mechs like Surge and so on. All right, moving on to EM rifle.
Yeah, rifles. Great sniping weapon. Yes, you can do crazy stuff like putting it on a Surge and just relocate often, which is so fun. But again, the whole purpose of that is being fast and possibly being also invisible. So why not go in with an Eclipse?
And try to maximize as much you can from the abilities so you can stay back. So stuff like even Panther. And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed with an Aegis as well, because the Aegis has a shield, it's protected, it gives you that, calm situation where you can aim at you, without fearing that someone is going to hit you from the back or from the side. So, stuff like that where you can maximize the value of the weapon and stay back, right?
Yeah, why not?
Disc launchers. I think it would be the same mechs that we are used to, right? So Panthers and Guardians. But if you want to maximize, since the main issue of the disc launchers was a damage rebalance, to maximize its value, the Orion can definitely do that. Situational mech. The combination of these two make it an amazing setup.
Definitely.
I've also seen some run with Surge until now. It works.
Smoke.
It definitely works because the target is stunned. I think almost every weapon works with the target that gets stunned. Still, the purpose of it would be to chip down damage and get people out of a hiding spot because it has the highest radius in the game. Sorry. Miniguns. What do you think?
Cool weapon. It has some decent damage output, but again, what hinders the miniguns is the rotating speed while firing, so most players would solve this issue running them on an Eclipse, also because you got the invisibility on your part and can relocate fast enough when you see a problem come at you. So yeah, you can't really stay too far from your targets because the bullets spread, but also you can't really brawl in with ease with some mechs. Yes, you can put them also on a vortex because you got a ton of resistance when you activate your ability. It's also a fun setup, I will say. I tried it a few times.
Did you mention Solus?
No, not really.
Yeah, if you think about
Is
it,
it cool?
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if you blind the target, then they're just like stuck there or moving because,
No, of course.
yeah, they cannot turn, right? So you blind that target and then you just ram down that weapon, just minigun, just chip them down.
And also you pair in the 16s with it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of damage too, so that's an option. We sometimes tend to forget about some mechs like Solus and Hemlock, which I'm going to mention for the pod gun, sleeping a target and then pod gun just throw all that green goo onto the target.
The most annoying player on the map.
And then and then he just explodes and kills the target because Polygon has a lot of damage, especially when you land all of its ammo on the targets. That's an option too. Hemlock, Soulless as well, blind and shoot. And of course, mechs with shields. Not gonna deny. I think mechs with shields, have a vast variety of weapons that they can use because of the nature of the abilities and so on. We forgot to mention certain weapons can work with Lacewing. Now, this is a new mech that has appeared. So, pod guns, EM rifles, and of course, without saying, we're not mentioning the must-have weapons because they basically work on almost every mech.
Of course.
Except the Ember gun. We can say that the Ember gun is dependent on a mech that can get close, but we've already clarified why that is on the top of the list. And I think that's it from my side. Stallone, anything you want to add?
Well, definitely, we have a few weapons in the map-dependent category that aren't so bad, as we said.
Yeah.
Disruptors, for example, I love them. I would use them in every game mode, and actually, I'm trying to get the most out of them in every game mode and in every map, because it all comes down to getting into the right spot that you can shoot from, and also that you can lure people to come hunt you from. So I would say being slightly in the open, but not so much. But again, CPC is a much more fast-paced game. Definitely, you can't afford just clowning around for too long without repercussions.
Says the clown himself.
Sacrifices have to be done.
You can make Disruptor work in CPC. I've tried it with an Orion, and I actually call it the coronavirus build because you will throw the virus, basically. You're going to throw the mark, right? And then the character is slowed. But keep in mind, you're also in parallel throwing the weapon. You're shooting the green, slow disruptor bullet. And when they match together, the slow, the mark damage, and that bullet, once it arrives, it does a lot of damage. And, in an open map, get the target easily. Of course, the idea of it is you throw that weapon first and then slow. That will be how you maximize the potential for this kind of setup so that the slow stays longer. And I've tried it a million times. It's amazing. It looks like coronavirus because once you get that first target down, that thing spreads, right? Because the 100 mark spreads to the nearest target, and it's just continuous damage.
You would just sit there and see the green orb come at you like...
Yeah, exactly. You can't do anything about
That's
it.
the same feeling.
Yeah.
That's the same feeling.
Your life just sucks before your eyes. Okay, so that does it for the weapon tier list here. Hope you guys enjoyed and found this useful. Let us know in the comments down below if you have any comments about any of these tier list reasons, maybe further elaborations, we are happy to share. And again, we always learn new things every day. So let's do it. Might as well do it together, right?
Definitely.
See you guys around. Stallone, take it.
Before we go, I would strongly advise you to go check out the previous video about Mech's tier list so you can deeply understand this tier list.
Yeah, we could link it somewhere here, there,
Oh, definitely.
whatever. Alex, I mean, you got this.
Do your job, editor, please.
All right, so we'll put it up there. Wait. That...
Yeah, that was my editor cursing me. Don't mind it.
Okay, all right.
Don't mind it.
Oh, that was a nice capture to the video. Thank you guys, and see you until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.